Caught with our knickers down there, Lauren.
Trying to pose.
We're trying to strike a pose for the beginning there, and then we ended up going live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of this awesome series and talk. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to just find us quickly, Lauren, and then I'll introduce you again. And yeah, what we're talking about today. So let me just find us. Quick sticks. There we go. That was quick. Let me just make sure my sound is down. Awesome. Hi, Amy. Amy is there. Swipe in, guys, and let us know if you are here. And yeah, very, very excited to go into today's talk. So if you missed last week, the talk from last week will be in the comments. So you'll be able to watch both. But today's talk is part 2 of Taking Care of Your Mental Health with Lauren Davies. And so Lauren, clinical psychologist, and I've introed a little bit more about who she is in the previous session. So please go check it out and learn more about her. But very excited because last week was such great content. Lauren, when you share in such a way that it's easy to not only relate to, but share it with those that we care about as well, just to be able to relay the message so that we can get this message spread as far and wide. And like you said, you're trying to normalize what's happening and what we're all going through so that we can deal with it and not sweep it under the rug, and to get past the stigmas as well around mental health. So so I'm excited, Lauren, and maybe we'll just say hi to a few people and then maybe we can go right into it. So we've got Mayuri there. Hi, Mayuri. That's such a cool name. And we've got Pat Governor's there. Hi, Pat. They're saying hi on the screen. There we go.
Hi.
We've got Karen Shacks with us as well. Hi, Karen. So guys, if you're joining us today, let us know if you're here. And then also, I think, Lauren, we want to make a little bit of time for some question and answers as well at the end. Hey, awesome. All right. So why don't we just go straight into it, and then we won't waste any of those precious minutes. And then if anyone has any questions or want to catch up, just make sure that you leave it in the comments. So go for it, Lauren.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thanks for welcoming me back. I think, as I said last time, this is such a topic that's always been so close to my heart. And I think particularly now, it just is a topic that we just need to keep talking about. And any opportunity, I love what you said, like being able to share it with family and friends. Like it's not something to be kept secret. And just in the last week since we spoke, I've had 3 clients kind of suddenly tip over into real crisis state. And it just reminded me how kind of maybe typically in a month, there would be 1, maybe 2 people that would kind of really be struggling. And now it's like in a week, there's 3 people. And others are like teetering on the edge. And so I suppose the thing that I mean, we haven't pandemics like this before, but there is a lot of trauma research and literature that definitely helps us understand how to navigate trauma. And the one thing that has come out time and time again is that when we're going through an ongoing trauma or crisis, one of the things that definitely helps us in the long term is to admit that we're struggling or acknowledging what we're going through, and we can't necessarily deal with it or process it, but at least talk about it, seek help if we can. And so I guess that's really I'll talk a lot about that today, but that's really the appeal. There's a lot that we can do for ourselves and should be doing, but also if none of this works and you're still struggling, or you're doing this and you're still struggling, then, there's really an appeal to reach out for help. And, at the bottom of the screen, we've got the number of the South African Depression and Anxiety Group.
Yeah, thank you.
And they're doing incredible work. And then I'll also share some other resources of where we can reach out.
Thanks, Lauren. And I think to just say, last week you gave like a quick little overview of what we're all facing, some of the similar in this how we pandemic together. And you're going to give a little bit of an overview of that. But you also gave people a little bit of homework and said, think of some ways that you have pandemicked and how you've dealt with that. So maybe a little bit later, it'd be great to hear people's feedback as well, if they don't mind sharing, because I think one of the powerful things about Jeff is how we are all authentically with each other, just sharing what we're going through, how we are trying to really show people how normal people are doing this, and how normal people can overcome it as well. And that, let's not put any masks on, and let's just be real and deal with it so we can move towards a solution. So yeah.
Lovely, thank you. So if I've just got a couple of slides to share just to take us through some of the content. And so this is part 2. And I guess, as you mentioned last week, I shared what we call the Covert Coaster. And I said, we are all in the same boat. We are all pandemicking. I mean, we're all in the same storm. So we're all pandemicking, but we're not in the same boat. And so, that kind of homework was really just to authentically and honestly reflect for yourself over the last year, 18 months, kind of what have you been through? And acknowledging that it's not all bad, but also acknowledging the bad and the tough and the struggles and the challenges. And I think often people have said to me, it's been so helpful just to know and to name these experiences, and to know that, I mean, you use that word normal, that I'm normal, or that I'm not alone if I've been struggling. And so, so we shared all kinds of different experiences. And I guess the key one was we were just talking about different feelings. We spoke quite a bit about fear and anxiety. We spoke about sadness and grief and loss. We spoke a bit about exhaustion versus depletion. And then I also spoke a bit about there's some people that have been feeling quite energized and optimistic and hopeful and are thriving during this time. There's also a lot of anger and frustration. And then for some of us, we're totally unsure. And for some of us, we're all of these in a day.
In one day,
in a week. And there's many others. I'm always reluctant to just put a list, because if you don't see what you're feeling on the list, I don't want you to think, well, then you're not pandemicking in the right way. But these are just some of the common experiences. And I suppose what the intention of last week's session was just to normalize it and say these are abnormal reactions, but we're in an abnormal time. And so all of these are normal. And so what I wanted to spend our time together today doing is saying, right, so if you know what's going on for you or where you've been on the Covert Coaster, what are some of the ways we can take care of ourselves? What are some of the ways we can fortify ourselves? I think about vitamins. This is where I got the word from. If you read on your vitamin box, it will say fortified with vitamin A and zinc. But, so we fortify our bodies with the right kind of minerals and vitamins. But how are we fortifying our psychological and mental state? And there's some very practical things to do, or ways of being. And what I want to start off by saying is that none of this is rocket science. It's actually all common sense, and it's probably stuff you've heard a million gazillion times over, but it's just not common practice. And partly because, if you remember last time I showed you about the brain, and because this primitive limbic system is so in overdrive at the moment, all the things that are commonsensical are not coming to us so naturally. So what I'm hoping to do is really just remind you of some of the things that are important about building resilience.
That's great, because that makes assimilation then so much easier too. If it's skills that you have already, but maybe the brain has chosen to not do that at this time because of the survival mode.
Exactly. And I think also, just to say, because I know if anybody else is like me in the Jeff community, we are quite high achievers and we do push ourselves quite hard. And that's great. I thought it was just me, but I'm just putting it out there in case that, the point here is not to take all of this that I say and now apply it all in one go. I think as you're listening through, you kind of pick up on one thing that you say, oh, if I could just do that or think that, then that's a win. So
Absolutely.
and you
Beautiful.
can always listen to recorders, so you can always come back and say, right, I've kind of been using that, and that's helping me. What else can I add in my toolbox?
That's so good, because like our tendency towards perfectionism will actually cause us to be paralyzed by all of the things that we want to implement. So taking one at a time and, dealing with that one and then coming back and going to the next one is such good, helpful advice. Yeah. And that's what our coaches do with the clients as well. So
exactly.
Well done.
Exactly. And so I guess I want to start, when we talk about building resilience, or fortifying ourselves, is this concept of perspective. So when we have flipped, and when the survival part of our brain is taken over, we are pushed into a myopic view, because this part of the brain is just checking for danger, for threat. And so what that can do is limit our ability to zoom out and kind of see the wood for the trees and try and make sense of what's going on. And so I suppose that was part of last week's intention, was around creating some perspective. Let's just zoom out. Let's see what's been going on. Let's remind ourselves that there's no right way to pandemic. Let's acknowledge all the different twists and turns, and realize that, yes, there is a real imminent threat and danger out there in terms of the virus. And there's other things that we might be worrying about, or sitting in that space of what if, that could be contributing to that kind of sense of survival. And so how do we start gaining perspective of, what is really dangerous and what is a real risk, versus what am I adding onto it, and making my brain feel even more threatened.
So good. Yeah.
And so the main thing, I mean, I've been saying this for years, but since last year, I think I keep saying it, and it's kind of come out quite small, but this thing on focus on what you can.
Focus on that.
Focus. I want to make sure you can see it. So point your eyes if you have to. But it's just, it's this thing of, and again, we've all heard this, focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't control. And so in the space of life, there's so many things that we leak our energy to, and we keep worrying about these things that we do care about and they do concern us, but actually we have no influence over. And so the things we can't control is, if others are following the rules of social distancing, we can't predict what's happening, what will happen. There's lots of futurists and economists and actuaries out there that are trying to predict this post-COVID world. I'd love to know what, crystal ball they're looking into, because nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
We can have our best educated guess, but if we focus so much on trying to create certainty about what is going to happen, we're just going to keep disappointing ourselves and getting shocked every time.
Setting up for failure, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We can't control how long this is going to last. We can't control the amount of toilet paper at the stores, or whatever it is that we are assuming that there's such a shortage. But the things we can control is your own attitude, switching off the news. So they say a maximum of 30 minutes a day of reading social media and the news. That is more than enough.
Yeah, sure.
Really, once you've read something on the news in the morning, and maybe again for 5 or 10 minutes in the evening, there's nothing more you really need to know. And in fact, if you want to be totally extreme, like I am, I don't read the news at all, because I know if there's something I need to know, I'll hear about it. People will talk about it. But to sit and constantly scroll the news and even social media isn't necessarily the healthiest thing for us.
You're right.
And we can follow our own social distancing, our own following the recommendations. We can, it's the thing that we can really control is our own attitude. And I guess that's the mental health care thing here, is how are you fortifying your own attitude and being very careful around what do you allow in and what are you allowing out. So, an exercise that I really encourage my clients to do, especially if they're feeling overwhelmed, but even on a weekly basis, it's kind of like a mental health spring clean, is to just write a list of all the things you're busy worrying about at that moment. What are all the things that are, all the what ifs that are going on in your head? So you write them as a list, and then you draw these 2 circles, and you kind of fill in the circles, and you say, of these things that I'm worrying about, what are the things that I can control, and what are the things that I can't control? And then of the things that I can control, what are some action steps I can do around those things? And I think the important thing, because a blocker for many people is they say, but then it means I don't care if I just say I can't control it, or, I'm not going to worry about it. And caring about something and worrying about something are two different things. I can deeply care about something, but if I can't do anything about it, worrying about it is really just a leak of my energy or a waste of my energy. I think I saw a bumper sticker years ago that said, worrying is like a rocking chair. It keeps you busy, but it gets you nowhere.
It's so good. Like a rocking horse as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah.
No, sorry. There's a little bit of a delay, so sorry if I cut you off. It's so true what you're saying, because years ago, my husband and I had this thing where we were back and forth on things. And one day we just looked at each other, and we traveled through Africa, and there's a lot of things that's out of your control in Africa, and you just have to go with the flow. And so we decided that we are not going to complain about anything that we cannot control, because complaining is not going to help it. But anything that we can control, we're not necessarily going to complain about it, but we're going to voice it and say, cool, now this is my action. And so we would look at each other when we start moaning and complaining about something and saying, can you change it? And if you can't change it, then don't moan about it. But what can you do? Like, how can you change it? And it's very often, it's just that perspective thing that you said again, like perspective and attitude. Totally. Help not have to deal with this frustration over and over again that you can't do anything about.
Totally. I think a mentor of mine said years ago, she said to me, her rule of thumb is you can complain about the same thing 3 times. Because sometimes we do need to just complain. We need to just
vent it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. True.
But then after that, I'm going to ask you, are you going to do something about it? And if not, then you're going to let it go.
Yeah.
And it sounds quite harsh, but I do think we need, especially in today's world where we are so overwhelmed with so many things we could be worrying about. I think that focus on what is it I can control. And it doesn't mean that we're always kind of positive and optimistic and sunshine and roses. Sometimes we have a really horrible attitude about something, or we're struggling, but it just means I'm choosing not to focus on that thing, because when we take back our agency, we then feel less hopeless and helpless.
Yeah, and that thing then ends up controlling you rather than you being in control of it. So yeah,
totally. And so then this is something that doesn't come easily to us, is to, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, is to acknowledge it, accept it, allow it, and just attend to it with kindness. Just let it be. We are so quick to label good emotions and negative emotions, or, this is the right way to feel, and I shouldn't feel sad or down or anxious or angry. And so we just want to sweep that away. But really, and this is that piece that I mentioned to the research around managing or navigating trauma, is the more we can just acknowledge what we're feeling and just allow it, the less likely it's going to lodge within us somewhere and create longer term mental health issues. And it's just trusting. I think we get so scared that when we're feeling a negative emotion or a horrible emotion, that it's like we're going to get stuck there. And I guess it's trusting, emotions are energy in motion, which means that they move. Emotions are really just messages. They're messages telling us something's out of kilter, something's going on. So if we can just stop and pay attention to say, what is this emotion trying to tell me? And again, is there something I can do about it? Then we're allowing that emotion to do its job. If we just push it aside, then it's going to keep coming back.
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. And naming it helps us to make sure that it's a real emotion as well, that it's not a, so for example, like I'm thinking of a lot of, people in this community will say, I feel fat. And then when you look at the basis of that, that's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. But there's real emotion attached to it. And then to name the real emotion and to actually then operate in the real emotion and respond to that, rather than going with the abstract statement and belief that actually isn't even true. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, exactly what you're saying. I think the way we want to approach our experiences and our emotions, even our thoughts, are with more curiosity and less judgment. So it's really about, I wonder why I'm feeling this. Let me be curious around what triggered it, or what thought could I be having, or, when else have I felt this feeling before, and what is it trying to tell me? So we broaden our emotional literacy and our kind of understanding of who we are, as opposed to, oh, I'm feeling so sad, I shouldn't feel sad, that's terrible, I should be positive. When we judge ourselves for having a feeling, then that survival part of our brain feels even more threatened, because now the danger is internal. So really just a curiosity approach.
That's
and
awesome.
Then this is something to really think about, just in general, but in relation to how we feel.
This one hits home.
If we can just go for progress as opposed to perfection, because it's not about, I'm sorry to break the truth to anybody out there that still thinks they're perfect, but it's not possible to be perfect.
It's not possible at all. Like, it's a thing. The sooner we accept that, the better for us.
Exactly. And I guess it's that failure is inevitable. So like, if you start a one-on-one coaching program and you think you're never going to fall off the wagon, or you're never going to miss a session, you're setting yourself up for
unrealistic
disappointment and unrealistic. And then we have this thought of, well, then I'm never good enough. Look, I can never do it. But this thing of progress says good enough is enough, or enough is enough. I am enough just because I'm a human being. I don't need to do and prove and push myself to be perfect. And then, this thing of, instead of focusing on what I'm not doing right or what's wrong, I can focus just on where have I improved? What are the small increments? Because the perfection mindset leads to judgment and shame, whereas the progress mindset is just curiosity and compassion for ourselves.
That's right.
In the perfection mindset, outcomes are either good or bad. It either was perfect or it wasn't. Whereas in the progress mindset, outcomes are just information. It's like, that didn't work out exactly as I thought. Interesting. Why not? What went wrong? Good. What could I do differently?
It's so good. We see that often, hey, when we tell clients to log like a nutrition dot, and people, like, you have the option of just selecting. You can select all 5, and then on our side it shows up as like a solid, green. On our coaching side. And then clients have the option of logging like, I didn't have such a great day with drinks. Cool, I'll just not select that. But we see that it's either all solid green or nothing. And I've said so many times to my clients, like, it actually is not about logging a perfect dot. It's about tracking your progress. And if you log whatever your reality is, whatever your truth is, even if it's not a perfect score, log it, and then we can see your progression over time. But if we don't, we're like ignoring the fact that there's progress that's needed. So and it's just loving yourself, and, like you said, being gracious to yourself through it, that this is who I am today, own it, and this is who I am, working towards, but not striving for the perfection. It's just, that's my goal, and to work little bits, and accepting where you are and loving it.
Exactly, because I think especially in this time of uncertainty, the perfection mindset expects us to know and to create certainty, and it expects everybody around us to know. And if we're in the progress mindset, we can say nobody knows. Exactly. Even the people in the World Health Organization, they've never pandemicked before. So we're all trying our best. And I think when we are in the progress mindset, we have less of an expectation of ourselves and others to have certainty, or to have the answers, or to know. And that just creates spaciousness and ease.
Beautiful. Love that.
And I think that links to the next one, which is around some of the things we need to avoid. And that's avoiding disqualifying the positive. So again, remember I said the survival part of our brain just wants to look for the negative, because that's where the threat is. So it's designed to do that. But actually, there's a lot that's going on that's good as well. And so if you're going to look for the negative, then you owe it to yourself and your survival brain to also look at the positive. So it's picking different sources of of news that you read and picking different people to follow on social media. So those that maybe are showing some of the negative or the realistic, and then some that are also showing some of the positive and the realistic. I always say to my clients, if you're going to play the what if game, I don't know if I said this last time, but if you're going to play the what if game and keep assuming the what if negative things are going to happen, then you have to play fair, and you have to also say, but what if it doesn't happen, or what if a good thing happens? So you got to play fair with the what if.
I love that.
I think what we want to avoid is the shoulds and the musts and the I shouldn't. That should is just really not helpful, especially during this time.
Yeah.
It's so unkind. And
then it's more like I would like to.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Totally. Exactly. And then this is something that I think we don't think about, but watching or minimizing our emotional infection rate. So at the moment, we're so aware of the physical infection rate of COVID, but how are we infecting each other with negative emotions, with fear, with panic, with conspiracy theories, with negativity? And so, the fact that we're wearing masks, I think, is quite useful, because it's making us think a little bit, hopefully, about what are we saying, what's coming out of our mouths, and where are we spending our time. And sometimes it means you have to kind of stay away from some people, because their negativity or their view on the situation is just not working for you. It's not helping your mental health.
That's very true.
That we have to watch for. And then this is a key one, and it's very hard for many people to understand it, but we have to start taking the pressure off. We should have started a year ago, but this analogy that we're running a marathon, I get the sentiment, because it's trying to help us see that we're in this for the long haul, and this COVID thing isn't going away. But early on, I said to my husband, I didn't choose to run this marathon. I haven't trained for it, and nobody can tell me when it's going to end. So that's it's a really terrible analogy. It's not helpful.
I need to sit on the sidelines sometimes and just take a break.
Yeah. And maybe I don't want to be it. Well, so some of my clients have said, okay, I get it. So I haven't chosen to run it, but now I'm going to accept I'm in it. I can't deny it. So how do I train for it while I'm running it? And I mean, people in this community who are in the exercise kind of space of mine, you can't train for a run while you're running it for a marathon.
It's true.
So I think the analogy is all wrong. What I would like to propose is, let's think about this period as a Formula One race, where we're on this track and we're going round and round and round. And I think that's a bit of that Groundhog's Day feeling. But I think where it feels relevant is that for the Formula One cars and drivers to keep going round, they have to take regular pit stops. They have to. They have to stop. It's not just when the race ends do they stop. They have to, during the race, stop. And so kind of what and a lot of not a lot, some of the more recent literature around building resilience actually says it's all about rest and recovery. It's not about grit and determination and just pushing through, because I don't know if we can't just keep pushing through. People have hit the COVID wall, and you can't just keep, it's that depletion thing. We can't just push our way through it. You can't, if a cup is empty, you can't, you can't just leave it there and expect it to fill itself. Like we have to pause and rest and think about what are we going to do to recover? What are we going to fill the cup with?
Yeah. And I think it's also so good to, in families or, work relationships, whatever it is, there are going to be times when my cup is depleted and empty, and to be okay with others to help fill my cup. And then there are times when my people around me will need me to fill their cup for them as well. And we need to acknowledge that as well, and be okay with being there for each other as well.
I love that. Exactly. And so I think one of the ways we can definitely pause and replenish is to just take a breath, slow down, breathe. And then on top of that,
Which doesn't come naturally. It's crazy how unnatural breathing is to us. Like we I have this, and I say this to people all the time. That Relax app on my device, and to breathe. As long as they want you to breathe, it's so unnatural and it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
But we have to because our bodies need it and we need it.
Well, and we have to consciously bring our parasympathetic nervous system back into action. So that's
right.
the calming system. And because
right.
our sympathetic nervous system has been so triggered for so long, we have to consciously do things that are going to say to the parasympathetic nervous system, come, switch on now. I need you.
Yes,
but it's kind of, I don't know where it's gone. It's gone on holiday. It's kind of sitting, waiting.
The neurons are not firing, so it's being lazy.
Exactly. And so some of the other things you mentioned, the breathing apps or just regular breathing or doing flow sessions, kind of consciously creating space. The other things that are really useful is to journal. And again, it mustn't become something that I should journal every day. And if I don't journal, then I'm not taking care of myself. Different people use journaling in different ways. Sometimes for some people, it works to journal every day or every morning. For other people, it's just when they're feeling overwhelmed, just to write down the things you're worrying about. Just the act of writing, though, interestingly enough, activates our parasympathetic nervous system because there's that pressure in the writing, or even coloring in or drawing, something that, just that pressure, it kind of activates that part of our system. And obviously writing, you can't write without your cortical brain being switched on. So if you're feeling totally overwhelmed and you just pick up the pen and you just write what you're feeling overwhelmed around, already you're putting your lid back on.
And it's also like you were saying, putting the things putting the things down on paper that we're feeling, brings it into perspective as well. Because if we're just thinking it in our irrational thinking, it's going to be completely irrational. But when you get to put it down on paper, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, ridiculous. It actually, I'm making this a little bit too much, and it's actually not that hard, or whatever it is. It just puts things into perspective again. Not that your feelings are ridiculous, but it has helped me to see like, oh, actually, I made this much bigger than it actually is. Because your reasoning starts kicking in again, and all of a sudden it helps make sense.
Exactly. And there's lots of information online around different thought disorders or distortions, and the things that we like, catastrophizing or magical thinking or black or white thinking. And so when I encourage people to just go and Google thought distortions. And if you get to understand them, then when you write, you can write down, and then you could say, okay, so which thought distortion am I applying here? And then, what else could also be true? So it is a way to kind of do some self-therapy, I suppose.
Yeah.
My other appeal, and
this is a big one.
I'm a bit of a militant around this, but phones. I mean, I know that they create connection, and I know that they're amazing, and we can have the Jeff app on here, and there's all incredible things. But I think again, we've kind of given over too much power. So I want to encourage people to do two things. One is 30 minutes before bed, get off your phone, especially if you're struggling to sleep, because that just kind of calms everything down. And then try to sleep with your phone in another room. Then you're not on it last thing. And first thing in the morning. Yes, in fact, I want to show you this. You can get this. It's an old alarm clock.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
Exactly. It doesn't have such a nice ringtone like you can select on your phone. It's beep, beep, beep,
it still wakes you up there. Yeah, exactly. It does the job.
But if you're going to say to me, but I need my phone for my alarm, well, before phones, we could wake up.
Make a plan. Yeah, exactly. Make a plan.
Because I think that definitely just keeps activating this part of our brain. Before you even got out of bed, you're already checking emails.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, and then the day just runs away.
Exactly. And then I know I'm over time. I'm going to kind of just...
No, you're fine. I'm just checking if anyone's leaving any questions or comments. So guys, go for it. Leave questions and comments.
The other one is to limit caffeine. So especially if you're feeling anxious, but especially when you're feeling overwhelmed, because caffeine can mimic the same feelings as anxiety, the increased heart rate. And so really limit that. Getting out in nature if you can, and even not nature, just outdoors. I think we're on screens all the time. So getting outdoors where you can. You mentioned the apps. There's a whole lot of them, which
Sweet.
are really
Yeah,
great.
Calm is a very good one. Yeah. I love those.
And then my last, like in terms of how do we kind of slow down and kind of just be patient with ourselves and be loving, be kind, be gentle, and just forgive ourselves for being human during a pandemic. I think we've had these unrealistic expectations of us to be productive and us to make most of this time, or to pivot, or to be innovative. And yes, we can do all of those things.
Bake sourdough and do all the Pinterest things that you wanted to do.
Bake banana bread, but I think it's basically just saying we are human beings and we're going through a global crisis, and we don't know the full impact. And if all you feel like doing in a day, or all you can do is get up, shower, have breakfast, and read a book on the weekend, well, then that's fantastic. That's right. So it's really just listening into yourself. And then I think what we need to do in this uncertain time is learning how to live in the paradox. And so what I mean by that is living in the both and. We tend to, especially crisis, this part of our brain thinks very much either or, black or white. So a lot of people have said, I should be so grateful that I've got a job because there's so many people that don't, but I'm so tired and like I'm just exhausted and I'm burnt out, but I shouldn't complain. I don't want to complain. And my sense is we can be both incredibly grateful that we have a job during this time, and we can acknowledge to ourselves that we're exhausted. It has been equally different, but equally traumatic for people who are still working. Having to work from home, having to manage all that there is, so I just love these both ands. You're resilient and you need a break. You're kind and you have boundaries. Others have it worse and your pain is valid. We're not competing for who's more traumatized during this time.
That should be without a pandemic anyway.
Exactly. And then, really, I think I said it in the beginning, but there's no point for your boat to go down because you feel like you can't ask for help. Or asking for help is weak, or you should know better. I think, I said it in last week's conversation that the suicide rates are rapidly increasing. And it's just, nobody's going to get a naughty badge for pandemicking alone. Like we can't do life alone in general, but we definitely can't pandemic alone. And so if your boat is sinking, kind of reach out for help. And to your point earlier, if you notice somebody else's boat is sinking, don't be afraid to ask. You're not being nosy. You're not, interfering. If somebody just seems like they're not coping, don't be too busy to ask, and just check in and say, how are you doing?
Yeah, take a meal or whatever it is that will help lighten your load. Yeah,
exactly. Because I think the key thing, what I want to kind of summarize, which is not just for this time, but for life in general, is psychological resilience isn't about feeling good all the time and feeling happy and never having any negative feelings. Psychological resilience is actually is getting better at feeling bad.
Yeah.
So it's about being in the tough spaces and knowing it's okay, and how do you navigate your way through them. It's almost knowing we're going to go down and it's going to be tough, but can I manage those better? Can I navigate them better?
So good. I love that.
And so where to go for support? I've spoken about the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. They are doing fantastic work. If you follow them on Facebook, they've got regular talks, all kinds of support groups. There's a 24-hour line. The numbers on the bottom. Lifeline equally is doing incredible work. There's FAMSA. And then if you can afford private therapy and you're looking for a therapist, there's this incredible website called Therapy Route, which has a whole lot of amazing therapists listed in your area. So, so if you can afford that. And my last comment before I'm going to stop babbling on, but I think
you're not babbling, you're fine. This is your quote. Look at this.
Something I said quite early on in the pandemic when people were like, well, we've just got to get used to this is the new normal. And it just infuriates me because there's nothing normal about it. So for me, it's about acknowledging this is the new abnormal. Let's just own it. It's abnormal because if we try and normalize too soon, what I'm afraid of is then we don't allow ourselves to admit that we're struggling, and we don't have the compassion that others might be, because it could be, well, what's wrong with her? Why can't she just adjust to the new normal? She's so slow to adapt. she's not pivoting quickly enough. And actually, if
Mm.
we just say it's abnormal, then I think we can be more compassionate to ourselves.
Absolutely.
each
Yeah,
other.
to ourselves and others as well. So yeah. Awesome.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's just check in quickly. For those of you who are still with us, guys, thank you for joining us today. Lisa Loche said that she loves these GIF eds. They're so needed. And then Sharon is there and she said, wow, Lauren, some really sound inputs. She says she loves it. Thank you. The suicide rates are crazy. And this message needs to be shared as much as possible. I agree. Guys, the previous session is in the comments. So make sure that you share the two together so that people can see the full picture. Susan says, great topic. Thank you. We've had a long lockdown here in Austria. So she's in Austria. The weather is miserable. Shem, I can only imagine. We're moaning about the weather. I'm here in Cape Town. We're in Cape Town and we're moaning about the cold, but just nothing compared to European winters. And then she says, Jeff has been a great lifeline for mind, body, and soul. Awesome. That's so nice to hear, Susan. And then Nikki said, yeah, the phone thing is a huge thing for her. She really needs to be more intentional about minimizing her phone usage. Absolutely. And then Angela said she's going to play this for her husband tonight. Well done, Angela. I think I'm going to do the same. And nothing against my husband. I think it's just we need to play this for everybody that we love and care about. And then, just a few other people checking in and saying hi. So hi, Esmery. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Shelly and Liesel and Nadine and Joyce. Nice to see you guys. So guys, thanks for joining us today. If you have any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments and Lauren and I can address them or talk through them or whatever. But Lauren, thank you so much. Absolutely. The effort that you've put into it is so evident, and the love and care that you put into it is so evident as well. So thank you for sharing it with us and for just encouraging us and helping us to pandemic. I love that. It's my new verb. So
Lovely.
good.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And guys, and if you know of anyone that needs to hear this message, please go ahead and share this with them. I'm already thinking of a few people that I think would really feel loved and actually not judged by being able to see this and to know this. So yeah. So make a reach out to their boats and extend the help and the love to them as well. All right, guys, have a lovely afternoon, and we will see you guys again soon. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks. Bye.